the T5 peeps, Bob the Dragon, Datamagnet, Cat Crab Lobster, DuckMachine, Astraya the Dreamer, Mezec, Feudic Jarl, and Casper Arnholtz. Thank you very much. Tapping Out, written by Hypothetical Shoggoth. Ambassador Admiral, retired Aidan O'Tear, nodded to his guest, and finished the remaining touches for the evening. 2 of the room's walls were lined with oaken casks. The observer sat in the middle of one of the others, and the final wall possessed the sole entrance into the room. Deep in the heart of the station, the room was behind several security cordons and surrounded by a number of physical buffers, including some esoteric designs. In the center of the room, a table with 2 modest chairs. Upon the table, 2 cups of elegant crystal, befitting the ambassador's station, and an entirely normal candle in an unpleasant shade of red. Satisfied that the preparations were complete, the ambassador turned off the room's lights and struck a match, lighting the candle. A light barely reached the back of the chairs, the room's darkness drinking the light far more than expected. I call upon the ancient contracts, the old bargains. I offer the price, really and willingly. Come, those who would have that chance. The darkness behind him took on a texture, and a third individual joined the ambassador at the table, lurking at the edges of the light. The figure wore a travel-worn clothes, and its skin simultaneously had a pallor and a feverish glow of someone deeply ill. Aye, pestilence, plague, father, bearer of the born by disease, hear and accept your challenge. A nearby colony has an outbreak, and I was nearest to hear your call. The figure's voice was a damp whisper, resigned and amused at once. The ambassador nodded his head to the new guest and filled both glasses. Purest Terran dew, aged in wild-grown oak for a lifetime. He then raised his glass to the shadowed figure and knocked his drink back, mirrored on the other side of the table. There was a satisfied noise, and the figure rose to a stagger to one side, sinking to the floor. Long as a stew, and it's like being used to fend me off. I did not expect to win, but it was always nice to have a taste of home. The figure slurred the final words. Its complexion improved as it drifted off to sleep. Ambassador Eden refilled the glasses, and as he set them down, the seat was filled. This time, a large entity sat before him, its motions implying restrained violence, and the candle's light glinting off nails and teeth that would be better called claws and fangs. I am a hunter in darkness, predator, taker of fools and heroes. I hear your challenge, son of man, and I will claim my due. The voice struck a balance between civil tone and warning snarls. The glasses rose and were drained. The shadowed figure smugly tapped the rim of its glass, and the glasses were refilled. The ambassador asked after the hunter's prey, and they shared stories of old days, pirates and criminals, void beasts, and the times their paths crossed. Eventually, however, the hunter took its dignified leave, finding a patch of floor well away from pestilence to pass out. Goblin, his chin barely over the table, lasting longer than many, though blearily calling it quits when it tried a sleight of hand its final drink away, but merely splashed itself across the face. Nemesis, the fallen, the tempter, who looked like a handsome example of humanity, until you saw its eyes were darker than the room behind it. He lasted through several grand stories of varying implausibility, and then, with the dignity of a falling tree, simply fell out of his seat. An entity, looking like an untidy stack of assorted deep-sea creatures, greeted the ambassador. Aiden nodded, smiling, and responded, Thank you. I hope your missus and the Star Brood are doing quite well too, and proceeded to go through 2 casks, drinking and trading tales with the creature. The observer, meanwhile, began to hear the chorus of left-handed miner birds operatically reciting the local regulations on accounting standards any time he looked at the thing in the second chair too long. So the night continued. Figures would arrive and share drinks with the ambassador, sharing threats and stories. Creatures out of the Terran's deep history, shadowy figments and haunts. Eventually, all wound up sleeping off their portions of the Terran's stew. The seat remained empty for a spell. The observer stirred. "You've made your point. Your species has many and varied entities watching you, who would notice and object to others taking their prey." The voice paused. "But surely entities like these, they would have to know that you have bioorganic machinery sipping most of the alcohol from your digestive system before it hits your blood, don't they? Terran diplomats are famous for their ability to consume nigh on anything, and your fleet officers seem capable of consuming the rest, if they have to." Aiden poured one last pair of glasses worth of liquor, and looked into the shadows behind the observer. A local fleet admiral who had been blustering about scoring humankind from known space. The darkness rippled, and the final guest leaned out of the observer's shadow, stepping past to accept its glass. A tall, ancient skeleton, clad in a robe of darkness from between the stars. "Of course we knew, except for the goblin, perhaps. And any of us could have announced that. Winning was not the point of this evening, and all who competed made sure none of the others cheated." The skeleton stepped around the alien, who was visibly torn between frozen in mortal dread and most profound desire to be anywhere else. Its voice differed from all the others before. Others had been visceral forces, sound from the psyche or born from the imagination of a species. Its voice was the silence of a skipped heartbeat, of a breath not taken, an absence that gripped the brainstem and got the point across. "We are not playing for the ambassador, nor his firstborn, nor anything small like that. You were a threat to our flocks, those who made some of us and sustain us so." The skeleton lifted its glass to the ambassador, the first of the evening to offer him a toast. "Your health." The skeleton and the ambassador both took long draws from their beverages, eyeing the fleet admiral. Somehow the skeletal figure's drink disappeared as it passed his jawline. "The point, Admiral, radiant pious, of the true temple of the expunging light, was to show you whose attention you had come to in threatening humanity. The point was to convince you that they had stood up to more frightful things since before your first prophet. The point was for you to convince your leaders that in this case they should." The skeleton nearly drained its glass and set it next to the ambassador's empty one. "Concede." Ambassador Aiden and the final challenger nodded respectfully to each other. Both knew that this was not the night for their final appointment. Fleet Admiral Radiant Pius, commander of one of the more active war fleets in the region, hurried from the room, framing his recommendation to the priest advisors back home that humanity may not be the ideal target for purification and territorial reclamation they had been assessed as. End of story. Story number 2. Deathseekers, written by Grey Wolfen. On thousands of worlds in countless languages and cultures, the Deathseekers are creatures of myth, of legend. The proudest warrior king, the most powerful of emperors, dare not defy their great black ships. They arrive without warning or ceremony to wage war and claim their tribute. Plagues, famine, disease, death. These draw them as sure as rotting corpses draw scavengers. Worlds both savage and civilized know their symbol for death. A cloaked figure holding a twisted and curved blade. The harvester, the reaver, the reaper. They are known by many names. Bloody-handed, unyielding cutters of flesh and shell, and soldiers of the long war. On worlds where they have walked, great temples or structures are built under their orders and by their designs, filled with acolytes and followers. They claim the wisest, the brightest, and the best as tribute, taking them to their ships or their temples to change them, teaching and learning from them, and returning them with new knowledge, new machines, and new ways of thinking. They are older than any other, and have fought an unending and eternal war, a war in which they may win or lose a battle or a siege, but never, ever surrender or flee. Within their buildings, all are treated the same, from the greatest lord to the lowest peasants. None may deny them, no command them. Yet any who suffer, who feel pain, who are sick, may come, and they will do their best to help. Deathseekers find places of suffering and disease to fight their long war against death itself. To cure disease, to repair and rebuild flesh and muscle, to face death itself and say, no more. That is what they do. The symbol of the twisted cross is one of hope, of healing, of mercy, and name of Deathseekers is the name of healers, of the wise and the learned. On worlds from one end of the galaxy to another, human means healer, and their symbol is eternal. End of story. And that, my friends, concludes this video. I hope that you enjoyed, and if you do, please consider supporting the author, even by popping over and leaving a thumbs up or a nice comment, just to show your appreciation for the story. However, if you wish to support this channel, there are links down below which will help immensely. I will see you all in the next one, and until then, I hope that you have a fantastic day. Cheers.